speakers on analyzing the situation in Sudan. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact of this is a proxy war. The geopolitics that is happening in Sudan is going to happen in the whole region of the Horn of Africa. In many spaces, regionally, internationally, I have highlighted this fact simply because the Gangawit was not the Sudanese people. They were originated from West Africa, Niger, and Bashir brought them and gave them the nationality to be Sudanese and used them for the war in Darfur. Now, right now, as we are speaking, we receive troops coming from Chad, from Niger, from Central Africa, crossing the borders of South Sudan to come and support the rapid support forces, which this name I don't accept it and I don't call it. It's Genjawid. We have to realize this fact. So, as leaders in this continent, you have to understand the time bombing that we are going to face at a certain time. I have alarmed many people for that, but nobody take it seriously. I'm again calling that the region will be paralyzed very soon with really terrorists seriously happening. And we see that it's going to happen now in Sudan, it's already in Yemen, it's already in Libya, and it's going to expand the rest of the region. This one fact you have to realize it's a proxy war for the sake of taking our resources and getting us out the country. The second thing, AU respond and IGAD respond, as the previous speaker has said, Sudan is the chairperson of IGAD. Sudan Prime Minister was the chair of IGAD, head of states and government. He was house arrested and no response was made by IGAD region or even the African Union. And the response came after he flew out the country. So the late response of the regional structure, including the League of Arab States, is also another area I want to highlight. And that also created more burden on the Sudanese people who are crossing the borders. People ran away from the gunfires, left behind their official documentation, including the passport, including their children documentation, and they just want to save their life. We know, all of us, we know very well you cannot cross the border without official document. But AU talks about free movement. And in this free movement, in such a situation, in the crisis situation, I think we need to be a kind of flexible. Yes, you need to protect your border, but at the same time, there is a humanitarian needs you have to respond to. Women were blocked. I was one of the people left Sudan to Cairo. I slept on the floor for 4 days, no food, no water. Because the water I had and the food I had to share with all the children around me and all the elderly people. We were like 200 buses, and each bus has 80 persons in that bus. You can imagine the number of the suffering. In the same bus I was in, we lost an elderly lady because she was hungry for 3 days. She cannot stand it. She was thirsty. She cannot stand it. She passed away. And Muslim, we have a way for burying. To do the washing for burying, we had to run from bus to bus to ask for water to provide that services. Borders were also closed on the Ethiopian side. The South Sudanese side, I really appreciate for the support for their brothers and sisters. But again, people had to really to wait for longer hours and for days waiting for clearing them to pass the borders. So I'm telling now, where is the AU free movement we are talking about? Where is all those regional and structure that we financially contribute to it in terms of paying our membership or whatever they call it? If such a structure are not responding to the need of the women, right now as I speak, the street of Khartoum is full of dead bodies. The region, the AU, the Arab League, the League of Arab States and IGAD were not able to use their power to stress the two generals to stop fighting and to respect the ceasefire that the national and the women and the civil society has been calling before the international and regional bodies, just to allow us to clear the street of Khartoum of the dead body and bury our own people. So the situation is really disturbing. We heard many cases of sexual gender-based violence, and I have to state it very clear that we haven't verified it. As I have said, there is no safe corridors for us to really move and verify such cases or even provide support for the survivors. Children are raped, children are killed all over Khartoum, and also in Darfur, still the killing is there. And North Kordofan in Al-Ubaid. So the war is now expanding to different areas, and the whole country is fully paralyzed. Where the regional structure? Where is the EU? Where is the League of Arab States? Where is IGAD? Where are those structures? The other thing also, we have the political framework in the presence of AU, IGAD, UN. And the main causes for this fight is the disagreement on the time frame for disarmament of the armed groups, including the Janjaweed one. The military put 2 years as the framework, and the Janjaweed insisted on 10 years. And that created the war in Sudan right now. And I don't know if you are aware of the Sudanese context in terms of the institutional declaration that set the foundation of the partnership between the civilian and the military government. So we work in two components, the civilian component and the military component. And now the division and the conflict that is happening, in fact, the war that is happening is among the military component. We were not consulted as partner of this. We were not asked to reflect our views. We wake up to find our country is fully destroyed. And they have not respected any agreement that was put in place. This is a real fact, and this is what is happening right now in Sudan. And I really want you to consider those facts I'm bringing to your attention, and let us see how best we can really help my people down there, and how best you use our professional background. Because I'm a mediator, and I'm also I'm also worked in many conflict countries before, and I have seen it happening in different countries. But when it came to my country, I saw how those structures failed us. And I saw how those structures even failed us in 2018 revolution. What we needed from them is just to stop and silence the gun that the song they are always playing. We want them to silence the guns. We will do our work and save our country. We will do our work to clean the street of Khartoum of the dead body. We will do our work to protect our sisters from any sexual gender-based violence. We didn't need any more help from them or any assistance, apart of really putting sanction on those crazy people that has really put us in such a situation. This is my submission, and thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Dr. Baldo, thank you so much for giving us an insight. We've been able to paint a mental picture of the despairing situation that is actually happening. And you've mentioned there have been reports or alleged reports of sexual violence and harassment among women, and other very bleak situations or events that are happening in the border. Probably if I could ask you, what kind of support can be offered in the current circumstances?
We as Sudanese women, we are trying to provide basic needs for those who has left their houses, like bed, mattresses, very basic things for them to really meet their ends. For those crossing borders, and especially for those without official documents, and thanks to the people of Halfa and all those on the borders who put tents and continuously feeding them until they find a solution for addressing their documentation. As you know, there is no government office is functioning right now. All the official document has been burned. So even for them to go back to their houses to get their document, there is a high risk for them. So better for them to be on the border side and see and rely on the support of their brothers and sisters on that side. The other thing also, there are people with chronic diseases who cannot access medication and who cannot access health service facilities like doctors, like hospitals, like clinics. So those are also dying in their own houses. Nobody can reach them. And as long as the gunfires is all over Khartoum and bullets are coming from different directions, people will not be able to really move and secure each other and provide support for each other. So the only thing you ask the support we can need, the only thing you can do is advocacy or putting sanction of those two generals. And they should not be part of the transitional period anymore. We don't trust them. Really, we don't trust them. So at least let them wait for the election and come and run for the election, and they have the right to practice their constitutional right. But right now, they should leave this country and leave us alone and let us fix our thing and let them come and meet us at the election.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. Abab, for shedding more light on the situation at the borders and, of course, the gender implications of the war. As much as maybe some of it may not be verified, it's still a reality on the ground. We have Shadin, a Sudanese who has wants to shed some light on this situation. Let me hand over the mic to you, Shadin, before we move to the next speaker.
Yes, hello. Good evening, and thank you for this this space. I'll get into the points directly, and I want to give a little bit of a background to the situation in Sudan. And I'd like to thank Rabab and Mr. Dondeya for their valuable additions to this background. But first of all, I want to talk about the whole security sector in Sudan. It's not about the army or the staff nor the RSF only. And considering that they have a very long history of committing atrocities and human rights violations all across the country, this is not their first time to be fighting or killing the Sudanese people instead of protecting them. But I'd say that the whole security sector is basically having very deep structural issues that actually resulted from the attitude of al-Bashir during his 30 years of ruling the country. And I can say that the constituencies of the security sector, and there are many, actually are basically swinging in their loyalty based on their interests at each time. For example, RSF itself, before it becomes such a powerful paramilitary group, it was actually brought closer to al-Bashir at the time that he was facing difficulties within regarding his status within the armed forces. And when he felt unsafe, he brought the security service closer to him. And then the security service started to swing towards the whole Islamic Brotherhood movement in Sudan, where al-Bashir was actually facing real troubles, making himself the candidate for the 2020 elections, intended 2020 elections. And at this time, when he failed to buy the security agency, he went and bought Himeti and brought him closer to him, and he was calling him Himaiti in Arabic, which means my protection. So this corrupt situation of the whole security sector in Sudan makes or made us actually expect, and we were waiting for some sort of a conflict, an armed conflict, to happen at any point of time, and we were just speculating whether it's going to be SAF and RSF, or is it going to be the reserve police against the security, the armed security service, or who's going to fight who at what point? This is one issue that makes us very worried. Even if this conflict stops now between RSF and SAF, there are other armed groups that are part of the official security sector that may also, at some point of time, have different interests and would likely go into an armed conflict with others. The other thing is that the conflicting interests between the SAF and the RSF. And I'd like to remind you fellows and attract your attention to the report that was produced by C4ADS a year ago or 18 months ago, and it was talking about the obstacles that are put in the way of Sudan to realize the political or the democratic transition at the same while the security sector is actually having their economic interest and economic power. Probably going through a process of a transitional process that would jeopardize their economic power and their economic interest was expected to aggravate their appetite to protect these interests by all means and all costs, actually. These are two facts I think are important to understand about the security, the SAF and the RSF and the other security sector constituencies before we go into any analysis of the current conflict. Also, Sudan has always been a troubled country with conflicts. I mean, Darfur is like it constitutes like third of the area of the country, and it has been in active war since 2005. And we all know about the secession of South Sudan, and then comes Blue Nile, and then comes the other states of Kordofan. So this conflict actually is adding hardship and difficulties on the Sudanese people and the Sudanese state itself. And currently, we can say that there are many flaming areas in the country other than the capital, Khartoum. I'd say that West Darfur actually is in a very bad situation. South Darfur is also in a very compromised situation insecurity-wise. And then comes the states of Kordofan that are bordering South Sudan. If we're talking about what's happening in the country, the spread of the crisis is not only in Khartoum state. There are many areas that are affected by this wave of armed conflict between SAF and RSF. There has been trials many times to convince both of them to commit to a ceasefire for even hours or for 3 days in maximum, and in all cases this failed actually to be realized on the ground, which actually escalates the severity of the humanitarian situation, and it jeopardizes the capacity of the humanitarian workers to provide any support to the Sudanese citizens that are trapped into this crisis, this armed crisis. Inside the country, there are all that was possible to be done is like grassroots level initiatives where activists and young ladies and gentlemen from the resistance committees trying by themselves to operate hospitals and small health facilities and trying to provide food and water to their neighborhoods. It's like a neighborhood-based sort of initiative. They are very small in scale, and they are already so tired, having us entering the fourth week of this conflict. And actually, the local communities in Sudan, across Khartoum and other states, are helping themselves with their own very limited resources. There is no support that is possible to be delivered to them in a very, let's say, institutionalized way, since the two parties would not commit to the ceasefire at all. Not for like 30 minutes. They cannot commit to a ceasefire for 30 minutes. They failed completely to do this. The humanitarian work and setup inside the country has collapsed completely since the United Nations, the UN sector leads and the international organizations and the donors have already been evacuated. So the whole system and the whole mechanism is now paralyzed. It's not working. That's why local people are actually supporting each other with their very limited resources. They're doing a great job. They're trying and they are standing with marvelous kind of strength and patience and capacity to endorse all the losses they are going through for their families and their friends and their resources and whatever they have in their hands. But they're still standing because the situation doesn't allow them to have a break. So this is a crisis that is being, let's say, multiplied in its effect because of the absence of any humanitarian intervention in a professional and institutionalized way. I'd say that in the borders we haven't seen much of help or support from the organization that we would expect to see, like UNHCR, UNICEF, or the Red Cross. We haven't. I personally crossed the border to Ethiopia, and I haven't seen them there. I only observed the Red Cross in the Ethiopian part of the border in Metemma, and they were just giving us some water and small snacks. And they had their ambulances for any health, like a minor health issue that is faced. And definitely the numbers are so large for the support that is being provided. I don't know of any country that has announced that it is ready to receive Sudanese refugees or provide support to them. As until this moment, we simply enter the neighboring countries, upon acquiring visas. And as Rabab said, you cannot acquire visa if you don't have your ID, your passport for yourself and for your dependents and everyone else. So I haven't seen any different arrangement at the borders from any of the neighboring countries. I'd say that Chad has already announced that its borders are closed with Sudan right after the conflict started. For Ethiopia, the borders have been closed for a while now since the trouble started in the Tigray area in Ethiopia. So it's not a new announcement, but it's possible to enter to Ethiopia, but there is no support regarding the large numbers of people fleeing the country. I will stop here. I don't want to hold much time. I will stop here, but then if time allows, down the road, I might tell you about some trials that we are doing as civil society organizations to support the Sudanese people inside Sudan, and then some of our asks regarding the the African Union in particular, and how we think that African organizations and Pan-African organizations can actually help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadeen, for your perspective coming from you especially. You've been able to make us understand what are some of the implications and how the residents and the nationals are being treated or received during this time of conflict. And probably let's go back and try and get a deep understanding of the ripple effect the conflict. I think I'll throw this question over to Professor Chidi Odinkalu. Help us understand what would be the outcome if Sudan's neighbors were to get involved on either side of the conflict. What magnitude of the implications of the war should be expected? And specifically from stakeholders within the Nile Basin, and not only that, even just the neighbors of Sudan.
I don't know whether, I hope you hear me. I don't know. Thanks a lot, by the way, for organizing this to begin with. And I hope we don't give up on the people of Sudan. I think Don put it extraordinarily well, that the strongest and most legitimate party seated to take power are the people of Sudan. And that's really where I think we must begin. That the people of Sudan have never really been given a say in the running of their country. Overrun, or in any case, held hostage in succession by the Ottoman Empire from about 1820. And then the Ottoman Empire and, of course, Egypt until about 1899, when the Brits then decided to set up the condominium with Egypt over Sudan. And subsequently, by the soldiers, by the military. And now who cannot agree which faction of the military, in any case, or expeditionary forces, nevertheless, should control the booty, because they've really seen the country as something to be raped rather than the people as entitled to the fruits of their land. And at all points in this, of course, in between all of this, you've had the Mahdist revolts, pretty much separated by 100 years between 1881 and then Sadiq al-Mahdi, who is now late, his premiership in the 1980s, which was overthrown by Bashir in 1989. Now, at all points in time, the people of Sudan have sought to try to assert unsuccessfully their autonomy and sovereignty over all of these forces of rapine. Now, when you talk about the neighbors of Sudan, the question is, who are the neighbors of Sudan? Because the interests inside Sudan are overwhelming, and the interests on different sides of this conflict are really overwhelming. Many of them, Sudan had 7 neighbors. Of the 7 neighbors, 6 of them are net suppliers of forced migration of refugee populations. South Sudan, a majority of the refugees in Sudan are from South Sudan, over 800,000, for instance. But you've also got refugees from Libya, Central African Republic, Chad, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and as Acheng has given us the numbers here, and I don't want to go back into those numbers. They're staggering numbers, and these are just official. If you were to add the informal refugees, you're looking at probably well over 2 million. Of course, the historic links between Sudan and Egypt mean that a lot of Sudanese are able to get into Egypt, and they have families there. As a matter of fact, President Naguib, who with Colonel Nasser led the Free Officers coup in 1952, was Sudanese. As a matter of fact, he was Egypt's president, but he was also Sudanese, and he was actually the influence that ultimately led to the dissolution of the condominium and led to Sudan's independence in 1956, but in January 1956. And then the country has been at war since then because the soldiers have never really wished it peace. But Sudan has been that kind of plaything of all manner of interests, therefore. And I think, first of all, its neighbors pushed for the independence of South Sudan many of whom would not want independent territories from their own territories, because they saw that arrangement, I'd argue, as a kind of buffer between the hassles of Sudan and themselves. And you can see that once, with South Sudan where it is now, a lot of neighbors who would have taken a lot of interest in the situation from the African side are not as active as they are. Now, the United States and Saudi Arabia are trying to arrange mediation in Riyadh. But Saudi Arabia has an interest. Saudi Arabia is more associated with one party in this conflict. And so the other party is saying, well, there isn't even a basis for a conversation. And so that mediation is unlikely to succeed. But in all of this, the question you must ask, and we must ask as Africans, is where is our African Union? African Union claims to have outsourced this to IGAD, which is the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which is the regional economic community for the Horn of Africa. But IGAD is chaired by Sudan. And the airport in Khartoum is not exactly available for the other IGAD presidents to try to get into Khartoum. IGAD is not, so AU claims to have outsourced this to IGAD. IGAD is not functional. The AU Commission chairperson is from Chad. He used to be Chad's foreign minister. And as some of you may know, there are very close links between Chad and the AU. And so most people believe, rightly or wrongly, that is not the issue here, but most people believe that the chairperson of the AU Commission is not acting as an African here, but is acting as effectively de facto Chad's representative at the African Union. And that's really a dreadful position to be in, not articulating the best interests of the continent. And what you see as a result of that is that Africa is missing in all the efforts. And you've just heard it here in the testimony. The AU is not present in any of the convenings that would or should, not a capable member of the Quad, nor of any of the other moves to try and bring a credible resolution to the underlying conflict, which you would think would then say, okay, if we cannot solve the big problem, let us try and address the humanitarian consequences, because those are staggering. You've heard the numbers from Acheng. The fact that people who already have refugee status are being refooled, returned forcibly to their countries. Across the border in Asmara, Isaiah Afewerki is licking his chops because he's collecting some of the refugees who fled Eritrea and sending them to jail. You've heard the numbers. Nearly 100 of them have been returned to jail forcefully. Now, and it's not just that. People who came from Central African Republic are being returned to Central African Republic. Some South Sudanese are fleeing back to South Sudan. That is not a situation you really want to be. And so the regional refugee protection system is in disrepute, absolute disrepute. And the implications for the international protection of refugees is even more far-reaching. Acheng again gave us the numbers. Second largest population of refugees in Africa, seventh largest in the world, set to pasture. What are the implications, and how can the African Union really be as somnolent as it is? Now, but when you look at this, the African Union has lots of high representatives. President Obasanjo is high representative for the Horn of Africa. President Mbeki chairs the AU high-level implementation panel, together with Nigeria's former military head of state, Abdulsalami Abubakar, a general. And Muhammad Ibn Chambers is a representative for, the high representative for what do they, silencing the guns. Has any of you heard any statement from any of them? So I really do think that we should, we can say all we want about Sudan's neighbors, and there are a lot of them who are self-interested in this, and we can discuss, and beyond them, the Gulf countries, the United States, Israel is there. You have Russia actually on both sides of the war. Russian mercenaries are supporting one side, the Russian government is with the other side, and the relationship between the Russian government and Russian mercenaries is not really on the same page. So People are all over the map on this thing. But the question we have to return to is, where are the African institutions? Where are the African leaders? And I end on this note. I'll leave on this note. Sudan implicates every one of us. You know, most Africans, let me say many Africans who go to Mecca for the holy pilgrimage and the observances pass through Sudan, because many of them cannot afford flights. From West Africa, across the Sahel, from the Horn of Africa, many of them pass through Sudan to get there. There are African populations from every part of the continent in Sudan. Sudan is a historic center of learning, of trade, of civilization. And by the way, Bilad al-Sudan is land of the blacks. It was set up, and part of this history, part of the situation we're dealing with is the fact that Sudan was always set up as the butt of people who consider themselves bigger and better than us as Africans. And we as Africans are sitting down here making them believe that that is actually what they were supposed to do. I yield.
All right. All right. Thank you, Chidi, for that insight. And I think from this, we all have one common question, is that who exactly, or the key question is, who exactly is in control right now? Who is in control of the region? Who is in control of the state affairs? And before we even get an understanding of that, we have heard over the years that Sudan, or we have actually witnessed, we have seen, we have read that Sudan has a history of political unrest and among humanitarian crisis, among other instabilities, which of course has had a negative impact, as expected, on the progress of the nation. So how exactly has the nation's past instability affected its current state of affairs? And why is exactly stability critical to the region? We would like to get this understanding, and probably I should throw the question back to, I actually wanted Don there to respond to Chidi, and as he brought in the role of AU, but let me throw that question over to you first.
Thank you very much again. And I thank also Chidi for what he said, to remind us of our history, to remind us of our context, but also to remind us that a crisis in Sudan actually becomes an African crisis in more ways than one. Sudan has 7 neighbors, immediate neighbors: Chad, Central African Republic, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Libya, and South Sudan. And a conflict in Sudan will implicate all this, and then we'll go straight into the Sahel and will reach and affect even people in West Africa directly. The economy of South Sudan will collapse because 95% of it goes through Sudan to Port Sudan. Their oil and so on that they export, which is the sole thing they're living on. A collapse of South Sudan will lead to a collapse of the countries that we now call the East African Community. So first, we are here first and foremost in solidarity with our Sudanese colleagues, because they are human beings. They are not just things. They are people's mothers, people's fathers, people's sisters, people's brothers, starving, being scorched to death in the desert, being hacked, being raped, the houses being taken over by thugs. We must do that, but Africans must also realize that this would lead to a collapse of the Africa we know in more ways that we can think of. Now, we must go back and demand more. We must demand more of the African Union, the AU. We must demand more of IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority for Development. We must demand more of the 7 immediate neighbors, but also of the 55 members of the African Union. And I'll say this, it's a great pity and a great shame that the AU that we have worked to develop various organs, institutions, specialized agencies, mechanisms for the last 22 years that the AU is not even in charge of the intervention, that the intervention now has been outsourced across the streets to Saudi Arabia, and that the talks are being held in Jeddah. That's a great shame. The first and most important thing that the AU must do is to change its posture. It must get out of this posture of weakness, this posture of meekness, this posture of calculated ineptitude. It must adopt a posture of confidence, a posture of being in charge, a posture of knowing what to do, because it does know what to do. Dismas has reminded us, when the AU has worked for us, how it has worked in Burundi, in Kenya, in the Gambia supporting ECOWAS and so on. So they must have a posture of being confident, being in charge, knowing what to do, and then they go ahead and do it. Our apex peace and security body, the African Union Peace and Security Council, AUPSC, should convene at head of state level as a matter of urgency. There is no justification why 3 weeks into the conflict, we are still only meeting at the level of ambassadors in Addis or at the level of ministers virtually. The PSC must convene at head of state level. And the PSC must direct these two thugs, not beg them, direct these two thugs to guarantee safe access for AU missions into Khartoum and the rest of Sudan, and IGAD missions into Khartoum and the rest of Sudan. In 2008, after rigging the election, the Kibaki government, which was de facto government, told the chairperson of the AU, John Kufuor, then president of Ghana, not to come into Kenya. They told him, we are not giving you permission to land in Nairobi. And he defied them and told them that under the Constitutive Act of the African Union, I have the right to come, and I am coming, and you will guarantee my safe arrival, and you will lead me straight to state as where Kibaki was. And when I finish, you will take me straight to where the other protagonist, Raila, was, and then back and forth. And it is on that basis, after talking with the two of them directly, that he appointed the team of 3 mediators. Kofi Annan, may his soul rest in peace, Benjamin William Kappa, may his soul rest in peace, and Gracia Machel, Mama Gracia Machel. So the AUPSC must meet, and it must direct the 7 immediate neighbors of Sudan to open their borders and to set up reception centers next to their borders immediately. This is not a request. This is an obligation under the OAU Refugee Convention of 1969 and an international law, including the laws against torture. Those are the immediate 7. The other 55, all 55 member states must immediately give emergency assistance in cash and in kind. The kind of cooperation that we saw in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, states got innovative, got creative, and they cooperated. And they were able to fly things across, fly prophylactics, fly medicine, and so on. That is what we want. We have the African Humanitarian Agency. It was being set up slowly. They must fast track the operationalization of the African Humanitarian Agency on an emergency basis and deploy it. The AU Peace and Security Council and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights should immediately make a joint mechanism that gets into Khartoum, assesses the human rights situation, assesses the humanitarian situation, and reports back to the AUPSC at head of state level. And also these two thugs, we should target them. Target these two thugs, target their business interests, target their business associated with sanctions right now. The AUPSC or the heads of state can assign the African Union Mechanism for Police Cooperation, AFRIPOL, to investigate and give them now a list of all non-assets, all non-business interests, and all non-business associates of these two thugs, so that we are not begging them. The same thing with IGAD. IGAD must immediately hold an urgent extraordinary summit, bring to an end the term of Sudan as the IGAD chair, rotate it to another country, and that other country can then lead in the engagement on Sudan and in the Horn in general. And even that IGAD leadership that was appointed, Djibouti, Kenya, South Sudan, must land in Khartoum as soon as possible. They must demand of these two gangsters to guarantee them safe landing, to let them land, and to go and meet them face to face, and to walk around Khartoum, Omdurman, and the neighboring areas and assess the situation of our people, our fellow Africans, by themselves. So we must change our posture, and we must force these two bodies to change their posture gain confidence, be in charge, be like they know what to do, and they go ahead and do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I'd like to invite the next speaker. And Rabab, Dr. Rabab, kindly assist me with this. I see Miss Aza Sarkey is here. And if you can hear me, I'd like to give you the mic so that we can move on to the next topic of discussion. So Ms. Aza is a member of the resistant committees. And Ms. Aza, are you able to join in?
Very quickly, if you allow me, Joy, just to assist you a little bit. And I'm not so sure, Aza, I hope that you can hear us. I've sent you the invite. You need to basically touch the microphone that is in the bottom left, and you'll be able to come up on top. And the importance of having Aza is so huge, I think, in this discussion. And I'm seeing here also Rabab as well as Shadeen, is because for many people who may not be familiar, the role that they play in terms of resistance committees have basically been the only I can say grouping that has been able to help citizens or civilians on the ground. And I'm not sure, Dr. Rabab, maybe, that could be something that when we'll talk about the medical aspect, it would be great also to hear about. As we're trying to get Aza, I am also happy to see Mader Sereke. Thank you very much. Can you try to switch on your mic so we can hear you? Mader, please. Try to switch on your mic. You just need to touch. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, finally.
Okay, great. Okay. I've been here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've just been listening in the background. I didn't know I had to request, but thank you.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. We are very happy to have you. And please welcome. I know that you have a lot to say as a Sudanese scholar and also somebody who has been very active on the ground. Can you give us a little bit more insight about what is happening and also how we can build solidarity in order to really do the job that we're doing, which is amplifying the voices of citizens?
Okay, thank you so much for both hosts for creating this space. And I would like to make a correction. I'm a scholar on Sudan, but I'm from Ethiopia. And I'm currently based in the US, but all of my research is concerned with what is going on in Sudan right now. So I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone who's studying Sudan, but someone who also is a Pan-Africanist and views what's happening in Sudan as important to all regions, all of our East African countries, as the previous speakers have noted. So I will just I think the previous speakers have kind of set up a lot of important points. So I'll kind of just respond to this question of what solidarity must look like. And so I think essentially the solidarity must look like is what the calls and the role of the Sudanese people is. And so what I mean by that is I think solidarity should begin with what is already happening on the ground. And as these different military forces struggle for power, they're not only killing hundreds and displacing thousands, but they're destroying basic infrastructure. And so we've all read and heard about how the clashes have destroyed markets and souks. We've all heard about how the Khartoum RCs in the last few days also updated us on how the RSF has captured more than 20 health facilities in Khartoum alone, and that how they're using these spaces as military bases and just capturing these essential spaces. And then not to mention people's residences and organizations like the World Food Program have also been looted of resources or captured. And so we've also heard how clashes and airstrikes have destroyed or disconnected water supplies, food routes, and electricity systems and routes, right? And all of this is happening in a country whose labor force consists of largely farmers and precarious workers. And precarious workers, meaning their means of making a living has been heavily obstructed because workers like this, such as the tea sellers, depend on basically being able to sell tea in the streets. And that basically all of this has been happening. So we can imagine the scale of what is needed and what will be needed in the coming few weeks until, as the previous speaker has said, these two military generals will be forced to come to some sort of ceasefire, which, as far as the talks in Jeddah has been going, they seem very unwilling. So to bank our humanitarian response based on these generals and their ability to do something, I think is not only futile, but is not going to buy the Sudanese people any more time. And so far we've seen foreign diplomats and media have been releasing information about how the transition process have been held. Like, there was a lot of miscalculation that came from the side of the West and the United Nations Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan, which is usually known as UNITAMS. UNITAMS was said to have been leading this trilateral mechanism with AU and the IGAD. But essentially the source of the miscalculations could have been avoided by listening to the Sudanese people. So any ongoing mediation or transition processes must begin with listening to these calls. And part of these three calls, I think Shadeen has given an excellent analysis on the security sector as a whole, and why we need to understand the historical role of this sector in Sudan and its regional countries, or as far as Yemen. And the relation of the security apparatus, not only to reproducing violence in different regions in Sudan, but its role in accumulation of capital. I think Shadeen referenced the C4 ADS report, which I think is very useful for people to understand and reference, because it kind of helps us see what is at stake for these generals. And so that also allows us to understand why the three no's were the championing compromise, no negotiation, no partner with the military and the security apparatus. So I think we as people who are standing in solidarity, as people in our different fields and sectors who have influence in these spaces, can continue to echo that the Sudanese people are not looking to compromise or negotiate or partner with the military forces. And so then we look to, okay, then what, right? What is happening on the ground? And I think there's been numerous, this is a Twitter space, so I'm sure people have seen the extent of mobilization just going on Twitter alone. But there's numerous work on the ground by resistance committees, by neighborhood committees. And so I think solidarity must be to support these committees who are doing the basic works with respect to their autonomy and their safety, right? Because because these are the committees and the people who are providing support to refugees, to internally displaced, to the homeless, to those who need healthcare, and even like to women who need sanitary products, right? These are the same forces that are evacuating people from risky spaces. They're providing information on safe routes. And let us not forget, when many of the foreign expats and diplomats were evacuated, as we saw how urgently they were evacuated, we are not seeing the urgent response, humanitarian responses for the Sudanese people. But even as they were being evacuated, the people who helped them get to safety routes and evacuation routes were the Sudanese people themselves, these committees who've been organizing. And so they're also providing water sources, right? And then you have people, professionals working on water stations and repairing electricity stations, right? And this is very important. There's like local initiatives, for example, in El Janai. Now we've seen initiatives to rebuild how water is being moved. We've seen initiatives, I think on May 6th, I believe, we lost a Sudanese electrical engineer who was working on repairing the electric stations that were necessary for the hospitals to get energy. So there is so much organized response that is also already happening on the ground. And I think any kind of solidarity must begin with the question of what do those forces need? What are they asking for? Whether it's through Twitter, where some of the resistance committees are actively engaging in, and there are people like a lot of Sudanese scholars and activists who are engaged in amplifying what's happening on the ground. But there's clear questions for medical supplies, clear questions for safety corridors. So I think solidarity must begin with what is coming out from the ground. What are people who are currently running the country despite the destruction of infrastructure, despite the destruction of all things public service? How is Sudan still running? And there are answers to those questions, and I think that's where solidarity must begin. And so just to add on my understanding of the African Union, I think we all need to understand African Union's failure to act really reflects the state level politics in Africa, which none of it is organized to serve the people of Africa. And so just like look at how Ethiopia was able to assist the United States in its evacuation of American expats from Sudan. But the state itself has been unable to protect people within its own boundaries. So standing in solidarity will mean Africans holding their respective state leaders accountable to ensuring the state is responsive to African suffering, which includes ensuring Sudanese people can easily cross the borders and they're received at least with the basic necessities when they do. And so the regional aspect of war and destruction, consider the thousands that have fled the war in northern Ethiopia to Sudan, and then those refugees that were already in Sudan, right? And consider the amount of refugees even hosted in other East African countries like Kenya, right? And I continue, and this kind of continues, but all this increased violence and displacement is forcing us to think of a regional response, because the national problems of different countries have really coalesced to an unavoidable regional scale. So I think this task to hold the African Union accountable is really necessary, despite it not practicing the prime service receivers of the African Union being African people. I think we need to hold it to task. And with that being said, I think when we do call for solidarity and when we do call for standing with the Sudanese people, I think we need to understand and we need to be sure that we're not creating the basis for which market economy promoting liberal peace will be imposed by Western states and their NGOs, and that clauses like R2P will be introduced, because we have seen what liberal peace has done in Libya. We have seen where even currently liberal peace is failing in different parts of the world. So I think when we do call for some kind of role, a response by people who are outside of the country to help the Sudanese people, I think we need to really be critical about what that intervention looks like, because we may be creating the basis for a lot of flooding of Western capital and structures that aren't necessarily meant to transform the Sudanese people's lives right now. So with that being said, I think I'll stop there and give the space. And thank you again.
Thank you, Madre. Thank you so much. Sorry, Joy, I just wanted to let you know we have Azza now. Finally, we've managed to connect with her. She's also in the space. So just a very quick remark for everybody, just in case. I know that we have a lot of non-Sudanese as well. Resistance committees. Azza, it would be great for you to also give the background. The women of Sudan, who we admire so much since, way back since the uprising, is the backbone of a lot of this resistance. So any conversation around resistance committees would be great. Joy, back to you.
All right. Mahder, thank you so much for your input and sharing the importance of solidarity and just giving us an insight on how the Sudanese have demonstrated the best ways of, what it means to be human by forming all these initiatives and forming these networks that are providing food and aid and basically just any assistance to those who have been caught in the conflict and assist those who are fleeing. And it's really important to amplify why we need to build the solidarity with the citizens in this time and amplify their voice. Allow me now to invite Ms. Azza. Ms. Azza, I see you have joined. Ms. Azza Sokati is a member of the resistance committees. And probably, Ms. Azza, if you would allow me to ask, the resistance committees that you're part of have been the heroes of who have stepped in to ensure the community is still, has access to services that are much needed as a government, which the government has, maybe failed or has collapsed. Are you able to share with us probably what has been achieved, the challenges, and what is the outlook on pushing for an end of the war and moving the country back to peace and democracy? Miss Azza?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you, Azza. Azza, you can speak now. We can hear you.
So
Hello.
I can help in. Hi, Azza. I can help in getting the translation to Azza.
Please. Thank you.
أنا برضو هساعد في الترجمة.
Okay, Shadan.
Yeah, if you may just repeat the last question, Azza.
Joy, the question, please, so it can be translated.
Sorry, I forgot. I was alerted that it needs a translation. So my question was if Ms. Aza is able to share with us exactly what has been achieved and the challenges, and what is the outlook on pushing for an end of the war and moving the country back to peace and democracy.
السلام عليكم يا عزة.
يا مرحبا بك يا شادن، مرحبا بكم كلكم وبشكركم جدا للاستضافة في الاسبيس ده. اتفضلي.
معك رباب وشادين، هنساعد معك في الترجمة.
تمام.
سألتك عن العمل اللي بتقوموا به وانتم كلجان المقاومة، ولو ممكن
نعم.
تدي نبذة عن لجان المقاومة وكيف بتقدموا خدمات في الوضع الحالي، وكيف بتشوف الآثار الحرب على الوضع الحالي. شادين
طيب.
في حاجة نسيتها؟
لا تمام يا رب.
تمام. طيب حاليا احنا لجان المقاومة هي طبعا كونت من 2018. كانت هي دورها هي مقاومة النظام البائد حاليا هو بيلعب دور كبير في الحرب دي. كانت طلوعنا للشوارع في رفض القمع المتواصل. حتى بعد الانقلاب الناس كانت متواصلة في نفس دورها النضالي. حاليا مما جاءت الحرب وقفت كل المساعدات الطبية والمستشفيات بدأت خارج الخدمة بسبب اللي هو تحولت إلى سكنات عسكرية بسبب الجنجويد وليس الدعم السريع. فحاليا نحن يعني بنعاني جدا في انه احنا كيف نقدر نساعد المرضى. فقمنا طوالي عملنا شنو؟ كونا غرفة طوارئ. غرفة الطوارئ دي عن طريقة وفرنا اللي هو العلاجات، وفرنا بكل جهد شعبي. انه احنا طلبنا مناشدة من ابناء المنطقة، كل منطقة ان هي يكون الاطباء يكونوا من نفس المنطقة عشان سهولة الحركة. كونا الغرف، حتى الأدوية والمعدات كانت بالحياة اللي بتكون في المنازل أول حاجة. بعدك شفنا الصيدليات القريبة من البيوت، جبنا منها من السبلايت كلها. بقى في عندنا مشكلة أساسية إنه لما يكون كل منظمة تتواصل معانا، يا جماعة ارفعوا لنا حوجتكم عشان إحنا نقدر نساعدكم. طيب إحنا حتى لو رفعنا الحوجة ما في فايدة، لأنه ما في ممرات آمنة، ما في زول يقدر يوصل لنا الحوجة. إحنا ما حنقدر نشيل منه الحوجة. في مرة
بس دقيقة عشان
أيوة
نحدد النقطة.
طيب.
Shadin has kindly gave a background on the resistance committee, how it started in 2018 to put effort to really address the injustice and to address the violation that was done by the dictatorship regime, al-Bashir regime and the previous regime. She said we continue our effort to address the injustice and the violation. And in 2015 of October, when the military coup that happened in 2021 and break the relationship and the partnership between the civilian and the military, they continue their effort to really to address the injustice and violation and continue to support the community and support the insurance of the implementation of that constitutional declaration. In the current war, they started to provide basic medical services for the
I think we lost you, Rabab, for a minute.
Janjaweed, or because
okay.
the medical team will not able to access the hospitals because the insecurity and also the gunfires that on the street. So they identified doctors within the resident areas where they operate. And you know, the resistance committees are in all residence areas in Khartoum and in Sudan. So they are on the ground there. So they identify doctors and they identify pharmacies so that they can provide medical support for the needy people. Shadin, في حاجة نسيتها؟
I'd just like to add that they have established emergency an emergency room that actually connects their efforts that are neighborhood based And this emergency room actually coordinates the provision of the services on neighborhood based. They provide as priority, they provide the health services for the people around. And what they did is that they are recruiting medical staff from the neighborhood because of the problems of accessibility. And they are actually trying to gather equipments and medications from the nearby pharmacies. Azza actually talked about one of the challenges they are facing, which is basically the safe passages for them to be able to even either access the support that is being offered to them, in-kind support that is being offered to them, or for the affected people to actually have access to the services they're trying to provide. There is a real, this is very dangerous to work in this situation since there are no passages and there is no ceasefire. That's it. Thank you. ممكن تواصلي يا عزة.
طيب حاليا زي ما قلت لكم احنا بيتواصلوا معنا المنظمات وكمية من حتى ممكن تكون في مستشفيات حابين انه يساعدونا، لكن احنا ما قادرين نصل لهم. بيكون فيها مجازفة كبيرة جدا جدا الحركة، لانه طالما اللي هو المظاهر العسكرية ووجود الجنجويد في الشوارع، خاصة احنا منطقتنا اللي هي شرق الخرطوم هي عبارة عن مستعمرة لآل دقلو. فحاليا احنا بنعاني تماما في حتى الحركه داخل الحي، اصبحت الحركه داخل الحي مشكله. فناشدنا لكل المناطق ان هي تقوم بتفعيل غرفه الطوارئ، بسبب لانه مثلا حسي حاليا احنا كان غرفتنا هي غرفه طوارئ المعموره بتخدم اغلب المناطق لعدم تغيب الغرف. فبقى عندنا مشكله انه نصل المريض او المريض يصلنا، لانه بيكون فيها مجازف كبيره. يعني احنا مره كان عندنا كيس انه في مريض في اركويت، واركويت دي قريبه جدا من المعموره، ما قدرنا نوصل الكيس، عنده طلقه وبعدك بقى في نزيف، يعني عشان لا احنا قادرين نصل له ولا قادر يصلنا. فبعدين بعد مجازفه طويله جدا اضطر واحد من الاطباء انه هو يصل له. فدي فيها حتى مجازفه على الكادر الطبي. بالاضافه برضه اذا كان مره لنا واقع انه كان برضه احنا محتاجين سبلايز ما عندنا، يعني نفدت كل حتى الكميات اللي في الصيدليات نفدت. اضطرينا انه في وابل من الرصاص احنا وصلنا المخزن، شلنا الحياه اللي احنا ممكن ننقذ بها حياه المرضى، ورجعنا للمركز الصحي وتباشرنا عملنا. لكن الحاله دي يعني عدم توفر الممرات الامنه هي لا فيها حياه للمصاب ولا فيها حياه للكادر الطبي، ولا حتى احنا لا بنقدر نصل سبلايز ولا سبلايز تصلنا. فاحنا حاليا يعني حتى حاليا احنا ابتدينا يكون في شح في السبلاي، لانه احنا ما قادرين نصل اي مكان.
تسمح لي يا عزة ترجم هنا؟
ايوه.
So Azza was talking about the way they operate and how they have established their emergency rooms based on like in neighborhood bases. And she's saying that one of their problems in their area is that Janjaweed is actually taking over the whole neighborhood and the houses and the facilities, which actually makes moving in the streets, makes the streets very hostile for them to be able to move and provide the support as volunteers. Actually, this makes them call for their other fellows or their other resistance committees to try and establish more emergency rooms for neighborhoods with a smaller scale, so that the challenge of them having to commune between neighborhoods would actually get a little bit less dangerous. She's talking now about additional challenges regarding the very low levels of supplies. They are running out of medical supplies from the neighboring areas or from the closed pharmacies and medical facilities, which makes them actually have to move for longer distances to reach the supplies in bigger stores. And she's saying that actually they are moving in the middle of live ammunition, and that this puts hazard on them, on the medical staff, and even on the injured and the sick people while they're trying to access the service. Azza is stressing again on the issue of the safe passages. And she literally said that what they are doing now, although they are doing it with a lot of courage, but it doesn't guarantee life neither for the injured nor for them as volunteers nor for the doctors or the medical staff as well. عزة ممكن تواصلي؟
طيب طيب برضو احنا انا زي ما قلت دائما انا من ما بدت الحرب بنادي دائما بمرات الامنه فقط، لانه زي ما قلت لكم المرات الامنه حتوفر كل الحياه، بعد ذاك الحياه حتبقى سهله اصلا يعني. ما هي حتى حاليا الحرب هي عباره عن عدم ممرات امنه بالنسبه لنا. حاليا بقت تظهر برضو في المواد التموينيه، في المخابز، كل ما انتشرت القوات في الشوارع الحياه بتبقى اقل. يعني حاليا مثلا في مخابز قفلت خلاص، لانه حاليا بيتهجموا عليها بيشيلوا العائد اليومي. في محلات كثيره الليله، انا طلعت الليله عشان قلت امشي اشوف الحاصل شنو. كم المحلات كلها بتشيل البضاعه وبيسافروا، فبعد شويه حيكون في خطر في حتى في المواد الغذائيه. غرفه الطوارئ برضو اشتغلت على الحاجه دي. في اسر طبعا كثير متعففه، الاسر البسيطه اللي هي اصلا ما بيلقوا، اللي هم رزق اليوم باليوم. احنا يعني بقينا مهتمين ان احنا نوفر لهم المواد الغذائيه بالطريقه دي. لا احنا حنقدر نوفر لنفسنا، لا هم حنقدر نوفر لهم حاجه. بعد ده الخطر ابتدى يظهر صراحه. احنا لغايه قبل كم يوم ما كنا حاسين بحاجه، الدكاكين كانت شغاله عادي، المخابز شغاله، حسي كله ابتدى يحس بالخطر وينسحب من الشارع. فزي ما قلت لكم احنا بننادي فقط بالممرات الامنه وكله بعد ذاك بيجي. ما هي لو توفرت الممرات الامنه احنا ما عندنا مشكله ثانيه. ممكن ترجمه.
Azza is saying that since the very start of this conflict, they have been talking or asking and demanding the provision of safe passages, and they are very frustrated that this is not guaranteed till now, while they cannot actually stop supporting the families and the affected people. They have to work under these circumstances, but what they really demand and what they really want is the safe passages. Another point she raised is about the scarcity of the food supplies that has been noticed recently. And one of the reasons is because how the Janjaweed are actually spread in the neighborhoods, and their attitude of looting the bakeries and the shops and all the other businesses. So they tend to close now, the bakeries and the shops, and their owners actually are closing their shops and taking their stock with them away in fear of the Janjaweed looting them or even threatening their lives. I'd like to echo Azza's repeated ask and demand about providing the safe passages for the humanitarian assistance to be delivered to the affected people. يا عزة ممكن تواصلي؟
طيب برضو بالنسبة لأنه هو تواجد القوات الجنجويد في الشوارع أصبح خطر جدا على المارة، على المواطنين. يعني اللي هي نهب المنازل، نهب العربات بصورة مستمرة. فأنا بعتبر إنه أصلا هنا حاليا إحنا ما في حرب، إحنا حاليا في دمار ونهب للمواطن. فأنا بعتقد إنه خروجه من الأحياء ده هو المطلب الأساسي اللي هو يوفر الممرات الآمنة، ونرجع دائما للممرات الآمنة. وأعتقد إنه ثاني يعني أنا بالنسبة لي حتى ما عندي كلام غير أقول كلمة واحدة: العسكر للسكنات والجنجويد ينحل. ودي الحاجة، ده المطلب الأساسي. ما في مظاهر عسكرية بتكون داخل المناطق غير السودان. يعني أنا ما شفت يعني قدر الواحد مشى دول ما في سكنات عسكرية بتكون جوا المناطق داخل الأحياء أو قريبة من الأحياء. فحاليا إحنا دي الحاجة بنعاني بها جدا، ونتمنى إنه إحنا في السودان الجديدة هاي تكون ما موجودة، لأنه حاليا زي ما إحنا شفنا بكل سهولة استباحوا الأحياء، استباحوا المواطنين.
So Azza is concluding with a very strong statement. She says that SAF should go to the barracks and the Janjaweed to be dismantled. This is what they want. This is what they think that would give the new Sudan a chance to prosper and develop and be habitable for the people. Armed forces to go to the barracks and Janjaweed to be dissolved. This is what she's asking for. Azza, shukran laki. Thank you very much. Azza has concluded already. Thank you.
شكرا.
Azad, sorry, Ms. Azad, thank you so much. Thank you for giving us an insight on what the reality is for the resistant committees and what they have to deal with in terms of this conflict. If you could allow me now to maybe hand over the mic to Samia El Hashmi. She's a lawyer and a human rights activist. I'd like her to shed more light on this. Samia, if you can hear me.
Joy, I think Samia has not yet gotten the mic or is on her way to get the mic. But I don't see, unless it's me, I don't see her here with the speakers.
All right, as we wait for her to join in, let me check in on her. And probably we could now get a few questions or maybe comments or, just additionals from our listeners to do with today's topic. And
I have added, yes, I've added somebody, Anna Sudan Net. I've tried to take a look on the profile, says it's from Sudan and London. So maybe a quick comment from Anna Sudan while we're also trying to get others. Anna Sudan, and yes. Comments, questions? Hi.
I do have a comment, if I may. Just I want to bring you personal experience to corroborate what's been reported about the human rights abuses and war crimes being committed by Janjaweed. But if I may start by thanking you. I want to say the war brings the worst and the best of people. The best is seeing here. All of you guys, our brothers and sisters from Africa. Your solidarity is truly heartwarming. We've been feeling very alone. It's very emotional, as you can hear in my voice. I want to also commend Azza. Azza, I congratulate you, Hayiki, for calling it what it is, Janjaweed. They're not a rapid support force. They are Janjaweed. They are bandits. My personal experience, so although I'm living in the UK with my family, I'm one of the very fortunate people. My mother is from Khartoum. Her whole family is from Khartoum. They've been there for over 100 years. So you can imagine their homes are scattered around the city. In the first few days of this, I don't even know if I can call it a war, this fight between the two generals. 3 of my mother's very close cousins got killed in an aerial bombardment while in the process of fleeing their home to drive to Egypt to seek safety. Their 2 daughters, 2 of the girls were sat in the car where 3 adults were bombed dead instantly. My cousin was, I would say, killed the day before yesterday. My first cousin, his brother, late brother, is my mother's brother. His father is my mother's late brother. He was on dialysis. The Janjaweed threw them out of hospital, as they have for so many patients. He couldn't continue his dialysis treatment. His poor mother and sister went around different cities under, dangerous roads, fire, literally caught in crossfires, trying to save him. Eventually he succumbed, died, 49 years of age. Another example, my first cousin's mother-in-law, the Janjaweed, took over her house. They're holding her hostage right now, and she's ordered to cook and clean for them. This is actively happening in a modern city like Sudan in 2023. Our own house, my parents' house, what they've worked for all their life. My dad passed away last year in June. All my mother and dad had was this house and a car. They're all parked in the house right now. We are told, and we've seen reports online, believe it or not, with our house with a pin on it, where a Janjaweed has been located, a sniper. They've taken over our house and they've got a sniper on top of our house, shooting and killing people, Sudanese people. And the last example I'll tell you is that we're getting calls regularly. My poor mother's heart is totally broken because she's getting calls from family members, and I call them SOS Mayday calls. They are asking for help to get them out. They're asking for money, to send them money. We can't send remittances. We can't send them money to get them out. We can't help. We can't send them money to buy food. So I want to end, because obviously I know you guys have, this platform is precious and you want to get as many voices as possible. I just want to say Sudan is a nation of great strategic importance, and I think it's clear now. We know that wars get started through involvement from international players, and it gets stopped by international players getting involved. Why up to this day, seeing the war crimes of Janjaweed and seeing the violations against innocent Sudanese people, nobody's condemning the Janjaweed. No one is calling them a terrorist group. They are a terrorist group. Everything they are doing is the behavior of a terrorist group. The same way ISIS was treated, we expect Janjaweed to be treated. So, in the diaspora, we are desperate to help. We want to help by getting on the ground and being there with our brothers and sisters in Sudan. We are happy to give our lives for Sudan. We're happy to be there and feel what they feel and go through what they go through, but it's very difficult to find places where we can go and get help, find help, participate. It seems like conversations about Sudan are just not happening, and I don't know why. So we want to help any way we can. If from the outside, we want to be able to send money, send humanitarian aid, talk to people, join platforms, anything we can do. It's just that a platform like yours it's not as easily accessible, or maybe we are not aware of where we can have these conversations and where we can go and help. Once again, thank you so much. Truly a heartfelt thank you to everyone. And I want to say, repeat what Azza has said. العسكر للسكنات والجنجويد اتحل. And the translation, as Shadin kindly translated, the military to the barracks and Janjaweed are dissolved. And that is our number one request, besides all the humanitarian access and safe passages. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I just wanted very quickly to say I've completely been devastated by what you've been telling me. And I know that there's so much story on the ground. And I just love the fact that all of you call it what it needs to be. It's not RSF, it's Janjaweed.
Correct.
And if we don't call it what it is, and we keep giving it a more acceptable name of RSF, I think that's where we sort of keep mixing up people. And they still think that maybe it's some form of official faction of the army, while what we're looking at, as you pointed out, are thugs.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's about time we all get courageous. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm also trying to appeal people that have the ability. I do see a lot of people, I don't want to call them out unless they want to actually ask for the microphone. We're also recording this space for posterity. For the solution of how to reach the civilians or the citizens and how to get money to them. If there is any way anybody can think of a creative way, of a creative system, please do. Joy, take it away.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing your experience with us. It's actually very heartbreaking that you personally were caught in between this conflict with your family. I'm sending my heartfelt condolences. But thank you for coming on this platform and speaking up and just amplifying your voice on this conflict in Sudan. Ambassador Nuleddin Sati, if you can hear me, we would like to maybe have your remarks on this before we can end the space. Ambassador Nuleddin. Can you hear me? All right. There's somebody before we can get to Ambassador Nuleddin, who is I think our final speaker for tonight. Maybe let's hear from Abdikani Adani. Abdikani, if you can turn on your mic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sudia.
Okay, I think Abdikani, you switched it off and on. Try to switch on your mic again. If not, I would like to give the floor to someone else quickly, just for quick comments. Okay, Ahmed Mohammed. Ahmed Mohammed, you have also requested the mic. Okay, we have got Business Watch.
Thank you so much. Just quickly, my name is Frederick Wafula Juma. I'm a journalist and a writer. And listening to the stories coming out of Sudan, I'm actually heartbroken. And I just have a very simple question that I think people are asking. What is really the role of the African Union? Does it mean that the African Union is toothless? Does it mean that it's just a circle of old men and some women who loot Africa? And what's the role of the neighbors of Sudan? We saw Kenya sending troops to DRC Congo very fast. What does DRC has or the conflict in DRC are in relation to? For me, I think in what Ken Saro-Wiwa wrote that Africa kills Hassan is what the AU does. AU, when a black American is killed in America, you find the chair doing a letter protesting for a black American who has been shot in the United States. But when it comes to when Africans are butchering each other, the AU is clueless. It's clueless. And someone mentioned about the peace missions that were done in Kenya during the violence and all that. The other day we had Maandamano in Kenya. Maandamano, just for 2 days, the chair of the AU had already written a very long letter lecturing us why Kenya is very important. Why can't they do the same for Sudan? Why can't they call out for the two people who are fighting, who are causing the war and the deaths? Why can't the EU, for the first time, just be firm and authoritative? Or maybe they don't have those powers, but that's just my contribution. But we really need to stand with the people of Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else with any remarks or any contributions to this discussion before I hand over to Achieng to give us probably a parting shot or the final remarks to this whole discussion? William?
Yes, hello. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is William Keu from the African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council. I want to stand in solidarity, joining colleagues who are on this call on behalf of the organ itself that represents voices of citizens, to say we are with you, our Sudanese counterparts, civil society organizations, the citizens of Sudan in solidarity. And within our scope of mandate, we have also officially condemned what is happening in Sudan from the political leadership of the organ through the presiding officer. And at the same time, we are currently working with the relevant sectorial cluster committee to see what effort within the civil society space that we also can play, joining forces with other key players to see how we can contribute in ensuring that we get the country back to stabilization. So I just want to say on behalf of the African Union ECOSOC, we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters of Sudan, and we look forward to jointly working with you in seeing how we can find a sustainable solution to some of the challenges that we're encountering. Thank you very much.
All right, Shadine, I hear you have an additional to the topic.
Yeah, but let me first let you know that Mr. Nuruddin, Dr. Nuruddin, says he's trying to decently request to become a speaker. Maybe you can solve this with him. I don't know if you received his request or not.
I'm trying right now. Just hold on, Shadine. I'm going to try right now. I think, yeah, I've seen him now. Let's wait to give him a few seconds, and I think he will be able to switch on his mic. Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Nuruddin?
Hello.
Oh yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for organizing this session, which is so important to us. Your solidarity with Sudan is extremely important in these difficult times, and it's heartbreaking, as you said, and as my colleagues Samia and as all the others have indicated, voices, from the field, from the Sudan, who have given us an idea. Those of us who are outside, but of course following the events in Sudan, every and each minute, it's really devastating to follow what is happening to Sudan. And the solidarity of the African communities, African civil society is so important to rebuild not only Sudan, but to rebuild Africa on new basis. You have been talking about Africa and how Africa, should be managed, how Africa should be revitalized. And I think this meeting and other meetings that you are going to hold are so important, so that we stand on a common ground and have a common vision about our African dream. How are we going to build our own African dream from all this, wreckage we see all around us in the continent? So from my own perspective as the ambassador to the US, who resisted from the first moment the coup that took place on the 25th of October 2021, and warned those putschists from the first moment. I told them, you are taking the wrong path. Go back to the people, talk to the people of Sudan, listen to the people of Sudan, see what the people, what the youth, what the women, what the children want in Sudan, so that you will be able to serve this country. But unfortunately, they have not done that. They have done that out of greed, out of selfishness, as some of our brothers and sisters have indicated, and that's exactly what we are having now. So now it's important for us to stand in solidarity with Sudan, to see how we are going to take out all those who are now looting and destroying the country. The rapid support forces, so-called rapid support forces of Bashir, now are turning into rapid destruction and looting forces of the Sudanese people. The armed forces of Sudan, which we knew in the past as being our national army, is not much better for the time being, because they are the ones who created the Janjaweed. They are the ones who created them and armed them and gave them all the possibilities and the armament, the capacity to harm. So they are equally responsible for what's going on in Sudan now. What we are calling for now is the Janjaweed, to be dissolved or disbanded, and the army back to the barracks, and to rebuild Sudan on new basis in which the civilians the resistance groups, the civil society, the forces of the revolution will play their role, being supported by you, the youth of the African continent. You are the future of the African continent, and we count on you so that we can work together. What we are calling for now is to stop the war immediately and allow for the safe passage of humanitarian assistance. And as my sisters and brothers said earlier, to allow safe passage, open humanitarian corridors so people can move around and get the required assistance. What we are calling for now is that the talks in Jeddah, and any talks that are going to be organized, not only be between those who are destroying the country, but those who want to rebuild country should also be involved in these talks. And that the future of Sudan should not be decided by those who are destroying it, but rather by those who are building Sudan, the civil society and the resistance groups and the forces of the revolution. We want, this transition to take place, peaceful, democratic transition to take place in Sudan, so that Sudan can play its rightful role in the region. And you have given a good description of the regional situation, of the continental situation. We want Sudan to be a force for good and for reconstruction, not a force for destruction. The Sudanese of themselves need to be educated about their role and place in Africa, and about what solidarity the Africans have with Sudan, and Sudan has to understand itself and its position as an African country, which has been the cradle of African civilization, as has been said earlier. We want to be worthy of this, and we want to continue to work with Africa. Sorry, I have been all my life working in Africa. Burundi was mentioned earlier. I wasn't one of those who made peace in Burundi, working with the African Union out of my UN position. And here, some of those who have created this solution in Burundi are no longer with us. So I pray for their salvation. Ambassador Mahamadou Ba, and Ambassador Birhanu Dinka. Those are valiant Africans who play their role. They should be known by Africans. They should be models for what Africans can do for their country. I pray for Africa, I pray for Sudan, I pray for our region, I pray for you all, and pray for African solidarity. God bless you all, and I would like to welcome you one day in Sudan, the democratic and peaceful Sudan. So I hope that we'll see you one day coming to this Sudan as a haven of peace and solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Really appreciate that. Very lovely. I would say it's a prayer, even if you say it as a wish. For some of us, it's more of a prayer. And we would really love to also see that happening sooner rather than later. And we also appreciate very much the fact that what you just talked about, being aware that Sudan is part of Africa. Sudan is an important member of Africa and the African Union, but of Africa as a continent. And I think that is something that we are trying as much as we can with whatever ability we have to make sure that this sinks in to every African. They should not feel that this is North Africa or Horn of Africa. This is West Africa. We are all Africans. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, Joy, you are going now toward the end of winding down. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you again, Ambassador, for that powerful vision in form of a prayer that you have for Sudan. And probably before we end the discussion, I would like to ask our speakers, as I thank them for their contribution and taking the time to explain the situation and give us an understanding. And probably if there's any speaker who wants to add on something or maybe throw a question to the other. As we wait for that, I have a message from Samia, our speaker, She says that right now she's in the train to Cairo from Aswan, which she managed to reach after 4 difficult days, I can imagine. And she basically just wants to highlight the slow response of the ward and how they managed to evacuate the people very fast, but the assistance is quite slow. She says, I wish if they brought assistance with some planes which used to evacuate their people. Yes, okay. I'm getting the message that Dawn, you have something to say to the ambassador before we wrap up and invite Aching.
Actually, it is people who are more powerful than me that have insisted I must say something to the ambassador. But really, if I have to say something, it's just to thank Ambassador Nuruddin Sati and all our other sisters and brothers who've spoken before him from Sudan. In our view, because we are audacious people, Ambassador Nuruddin Sati is still the legitimate Sudanese ambassador to the USA. I hope I don't put you in problems by saying that, Mzee Sati. Ambassador Nuruddin Sati was appointed during the existence of the government of Abdallah Hamdok, our brother Dr. Abdallah Hamdok, who had some legitimacy from the people of Sudan at the time. After he was overthrown, jailed, and eventually exiled, those that are now in charge of your country, we do not consider them legitimate, so they have no legitimacy to sack you. So as far as we know, until a legitimate authority comes that can sack you, you are still the ambassador that we know. But having said that, I really like that our Sudanese colleagues have given us very clearly their message, what they want, which is what those of us who are in solidarity with them have to repeat in any spaces where we take ourselves to. One, urgent humanitarian intervention in the country by all the implicated organizations, AU, IGAD, and the 55 member states. Two, the army to the barracks and the Janjaweed dissolved. Three, Sudan to be allowed its democracy and to be allowed to grow and play its role in building the Africa that we want. And four, as Ambassador said, for all of us, including our Sudanese colleagues, to be educated on our history and our potential. And let me just say, to be continuously educated on our history and our potential, because we're all learning all the time. Before I hand over to my sister Cheng, I'd just like to take a moment to thank my brother William Keru, who spoke earlier. William Keru is the head of the Secretariat of the Economic, Social and Cultural Council of the African Union, ECOSOC. We honor and celebrate you, William, that you always turn up. You always turn up, even if we didn't invite you. You know we are meeting as citizens of Africa. You always turn up and you always express our solidarity. We are glad that you've heard our messages directly so that you can also take it directly to the other AU organs and institutions, the summit, the Council of Ministers, the Permanent Representatives Committee, the Peace and Security Council, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and others. As Maria, my sister Maria has just said, let us enhance our own posture as African citizens. Let us stand up for each other, like we're trying to stand up for our Sudanese colleagues now. Let us donate, leave alone demanding what the states should do, and they must do that. Let us donate to our own colleagues at this hour of need. Our rice, our sweet potatoes, our bananas, our shillings, our francs, our dollars, whatever it is that we have. Watch this space. We'll continue engaging, and we'll be working with various states and various NGOs within the regions to find out ways in which practically as African citizens, we can donate the small things we have to be put together and to be transported to our Sudanese colleagues at this hour of need. Thank you very much. And I thank Mwanzo, Maria, Joy, and so on for all you've done to enable us to have this conversation.
Thank you very much, Don. We highly appreciate as well the participation of everyone, including the fact, and I wanted to here really give the opportunity to either Shadeen or Rabah, I would really love to give to our brave and beautiful sisters in Sudan. You inspire a lot of women all around Africa. And we would really love to hear also if you have just a few words to say. Rabab?
Yeah. Once again, thank you for creating the space and thank you for the solidarity you have shown. I would like to add 2 recommendations. It's not only the gang need to be resolved, but we have almost more than 10 other armed groups that they need to be resolved and integrated in the national security forces. The other recommendation I would like to make is how best we can reform the African Union, IGAD, and the League of Arab States to help the representative to act regionally and to act continentally and not domestically. Why I'm saying this? I will just give an example. The Commissioner for Peace and Security, he belonged to Chad, and Chad is side with one of the conflicting party now in Sudan. So how will such a person in a very important position can act continentally and not domestically, protecting the interests of his own country that nominated him or her for such a structure? We really need to look into how best we can reform those structures because really they failed us. I was in the peace process in South Sudan, in other countries, Libya and other countries, and I have seen how the late and very slow response of such a structure in addressing conflict that can be really resolved at the early stage level. So those are my addition, and thanks a lot for all the speakers and for all those who attended and showed solidarity to us.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Rabab. And just to point out, this whole solidarity has been initiated, of course, as you've seen, and we basically just want to make sure that the fact that they've being removed from up here as the official account is only to allow others to come in, which is the Africans for the Horn of Africa Coalition. This includes, of course, the Pan-African Lawyers Union, which have been very important. There's Atrocities Watch Africa and the International Refugee Rights Initiative, as well as many others who have been part and parcel of this discussion and helping us also to make a lot of sense of what is happening on the ground. Shadeen, is there something you wanted to add? I really want to give a lot of time to you because I do know that you don't have a lot of opportunities. Shadeen, please go ahead.
Yes, I first want to say that I want to thank you all for the solidarity and the warm feelings we felt here. And I want to say that this is not going to be and this setback is not going to be the end of our aspiration for freedom and peace and justice in Sudan. And we're going to stand strong and we're going to go through this and we're going to get out of it and we're going to build the country that we aspire for. Whether this is going to be in this year, the next 5 years, or after 20 years, or even after we pass from this life, we're not going to give up because this is wrong. This is not right. When a whole nation wants the life that they deserve, and then two corrupt generals are actually taking away our lives and our hopes and the hard work that we did. This is not right. This cannot be happening. Not to us nor to any other country or nation or people. So we're not giving up, and we're gonna stand strong, and we're gonna live through this. They will. Himeti and Burhan are going to die, and the Sudanese people will live beyond them. I want to also to attract your attention to a very important initiative that has started by Sudanese people or Sudanese professionals who work in international organizations and in national organizations as well, which is called the Safe Passage Initiative. And they actually managed to send messages from concerned Sudanese on the Jeddah talks of Sudan which they have sent actually to the mediators and to the two worrying parties and to the international and regional community. We're happy to share these issues of concern with all of you, and we hope that you will be able to help us to push it forward to your connections in the African Union and in the other mechanisms, the regional mechanisms as well. And we think that we can build on this space and this discussion forward and be more practical and actionable actually in talking together and amplifying our voices through your organizations with the member states and to the African Union Peace and Security Council and to the Commission of Human and People's Rights. I think we can cooperate furthermore and we can work together for the best of the Sudan and the best of the whole continent. I'd like to thank you deeply again for this precious time and this precious audience and fellow speakers. And we hope that next time we'll talk that this war will come to an end, and we'll talk about the reconstruction and the rehabilitation of what was destroyed during these hard times. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Okay, Joy, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, Leah, just go ahead. Oh, all right. Okay, let me go ahead. Now we can give the mic to Aching, who can give us a parting shot before we can conclude on this space.
Thank you so much, Joy. What I wanted to say was that in 1994, Rwanda happened. We lost a lot of lives, and recovery is still basically ongoing in that country. And the presidents then said, never again. Never again will we stand back and allow such mass loss of African lives. The AU then spent millions of dollars establishing systems and structures, including an entire peace and security architecture and a humanitarian agency. And now they feign what Don calls calculated ineptitude. I'm absolutely outraged. And I'm putting out a challenge out there. Who is going to be that African president who is going to stand up and say enough is enough? Who's going to have the courage to let Sudanese people know that their lives matter and that they deserve to be protected? We as Africans need to call out, wherever we happen to be, we need to call out our heads of state. We need to call out our governments, asking them not to bury their heads in the sand in the face of such horrific occurrences and such massive human suffering. We cannot create the Africa we want that is peaceful and prosperous on the blood of African citizens and our Sudanese brothers and sisters. Someone has to do something and has to do something now. Thank you so much.
Aching, thank you so much for that brief but very powerful parting shot of how our leaders need to act on this now, because this is a matter of human lives at stake. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank you all for engaging in this discussion, for amplifying your voices on the conflict in Sudan. Thank you so much to all our speakers for shedding light on this and for taking time to give us an insight of whatever is happening, what we can do, how it's affecting us, even us who are not in Sudan. Thank you to all the Sudanese who have joined in and been able to share their experiences on this matter. Some have also given their personal experiences and how they've been affected. Thank you for giving us, just a mental picture of what exactly is going down, so that we are now able to we are now able to put ourselves in your shoes and stand up and amplify our voices on this matter, because as some of our speakers have said, we need such a platform where we can amplify what is really going on in not just Sudan, even in our other African countries. Thank you, Dr. Rabab Baldo. Thank you, Don Dare. Thank you, Dismas Nkunda, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, and of course, who has given us our parting shot, Achieng Akena. You have really given us a clearer vision of this war, but we are hoping that we would come to see a ceasefire sooner than later. And thank you, Horn of Africa. Thank you, Africans for the Horn of Africa, for most importantly initiating this conversation. And we are just providing a platform where we can probably and hopefully continue this conversation even as the war is ongoing. We can pick up and probably the next time come and talk about this on a positive note. As I've seen, Africans for the Horn of Africa have said, silencing the guns in Sudan is not a matter of when, but it is a matter of now. So on behalf of Mwanzo TV and my co-host Maria, I'd like to thank you all once again. Thank you for your contributions and your questions. And if you'd like to have a recap of this space, we shall be uploading it on our YouTube channel, that is Mwanzo TV. You can also follow our platforms, that is Mwanzo TV, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. YouTube channel is Mwanzo TV. You can also find us at Mwanzo Plus on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. So thank you everyone once again. And I don't know if Maria has a parting shot before on my end. I have been your host, Joy Chepto. Thank you for engaging with us one more time, and have a good night. Let me hand over to Maria.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. Yes, I would like to just very quickly say this is just the first space. We have attempted to see how much we can do. I would really request that although it looks like we gave very short notice, we have been able to get a good attendance. We are looking forward to do more spaces, probably same thing, amplifying voices, but also seeking more solutions. If you have anything, my personal DMs are open. So is also for Mwanzo and other spaces. So please feel free at any time to DM questions or anything that you may have. I want to also thank those who came and jumped on for some comments. Anna Sudan, you wanted really to say something. I saw you kept indicating. Is there something quickly you want to say?
Maria, I just wanted to say to you guys, thank you in how we say it in Arabic or Sudanese. Shukran, jazilan. And I want to say
thank you.
How we say goodbye. And goodbye we say assalamu alaikum, and that means peace be upon you. And that's how we say hello and goodbye. So peace is always at the heart of what our lives and society as Sudanese people. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, and God bless. And I'm wishing you all, for those who are in this part of the world, wishing you all a very good night, a good rest, and don't forget ever about Sudan. All eyes on Sudan. Keep amplifying the voices wherever you are. Thank you.